sit and dilly-dally on the Capitol steps. I take a look at my life and fantasize about the rest, as I've been campaigning and fudging so long that even my party thinks my chances are strong. But I never took a handout that I wasn't deserving, even if it's from some monk that I never heard of. You better watch what you're driving and don't be smoking, 'cause me and my homies might be calling the shots. I always do what's best for the common folk. It's true I raced a backer, but I never smoked. Fool, I'm the kind of wonk the little donkeys wanna be like, doing just what I please, cutting deals with the Chinese. He's been spending all his life living in an Al Gore paradise. Truth is often compromised, living in an Al Gore paradise. Core beliefs are sacrificed, living in an Al Gore paradise. His blood runs as cold as ice, living in an Al Gore paradise.
Well, for more than 20 years, Bob Zelnick was a correspondent for ABC News. He covered stories from Capitol Hill to the Middle East, the Pentagon. He's a two-time Emmy Award-winning reporter. But what we hear when he decided to write a book critical of Vice President Al Gore, the powers that be at ABC said to forget it and get work someplace else. So Zelnick left ABC, and today that book, Al Gore, Political Life, hits the bookstores, and we're delighted to have Bob Zelnick here to talk about his book in the studio. And Bob, I read in your bio that you were a practicing lawyer. How come you became a reporter?
Well, this is during the mid and late 1960s, and there was a lot going on in the world then. The civil rights movement in the South, the war in Vietnam, the Six-Day War in the Middle East, and there I was representing motor carriers before the Interstate Commerce Commission seeking authority to haul frozen fruits, vegetables, and berries, and I thought there was probably a more interesting way to earn a living.
Well, you found one, but now you decided to write a book, which is a very interesting book, Gore, A Political Life, and I'm told that the powers at ABC put the pressure on you and said that's not what one of their reporters should be doing. What was the story?
Well, it was kind of strange because they had given me permission to write the book at the beginning of 1997 when I signed the contract, and I worked on it for 8 or 9 months, paid a full-time researcher for 3.5 months, and then when my contract was coming up, they said, if you want to stay with us, you have to break the contract with the publisher, return the advance, and discontinue all work, because we think there's a conflict between writing a book about something and covering it, which was a very strange thing for a network to take.
When you got into the research, and I'm sure you did extensive research on Al Gore, was there anything in there that changed your mind? You went in with one point of view, came out with another, or did it pretty much confirm what you already knew?
Well, I wouldn't put it exactly that way. I went into it with an open mind. There are things that I discovered about Al Gore and things that were emphasized by the research that I admire. I think he's done a lot to try to move the Democratic Party toward the center. I think he showed great dedication in becoming an expert on nuclear arms control and worked with the Reagan administration on that. He supported President Bush's move into Iraq and Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. So I think there were some things that were quite laudable. On the other hand, I think he tends to exaggerate. I think he has some extreme views on the environment. I think he's gone a long way toward trying to almost excommunicate scientists and others who disagree with him in principle. I think he's had he's given himself the benefit of the doubt on campaign practices, and I think there's been something of a streak in him about compromising when it's politically advantageous. For example, reinventing government, he let himself get kind of bossed around by the government unions.
Let me ask you, you ate him up pretty hard in this book on that speech he made when he was tearfully describing the death of his sister from lung cancer, and you indicated that this was an exploitative thing and that he would do it again with somebody else. So you thought it was pretty shameless. Would you like to discuss it?
Yes, I think at the convention in 1992, he made this big emotional reference to his son's auto accident. In 1996, he talked about sitting there at the bedside of his sister, Nancy, who was dying of lung cancer, and he made a vow at that moment that he was going to stop this evil tobacco industry. Of course, as has been noted, he went out and collected campaign contributions from the tobacco industry after his sister died. He made emotional speeches in favor of growing tobacco and the great experience he had had growing tobacco on his farm in Carthage, Tennessee. And so standing there in the audience, and this is not something I viewed from a distance, but I was right on the floor of the convention in 1996, I wondered, a man who would exploit these emotions, these intensely private things, for the political benefit, what are we going to be exposed to next time when he's seeking the highest office? Whose illness, whose death, whose affliction is going to be paraded before an audience of tens of millions on television, so Al Gore could look more sensitive under the moment.
Well, Bob, that speech, what you're saying, was a total fraud. I mean, it was a lie on the American people. Am I stating what you're saying correctly?
Well, I think one can infer that there were exaggerations in the speech. I don't, you know, this is a language that we want to be careful about. Okay. Gore has had a tendency to exaggerate certain things. I think my research showed he exaggerated some of the things he did in Vietnam. We know that he exaggerated when he bragged about his investigative reporting on the Nashville, Tennessee, and sent a bunch of people to jail. He sent nobody to jail. He exaggerated about being the role model for Eric Siegel's hero in A Love Story. He exaggerated about inventing the internet. There's something about Gore that, you know, these aren't the worst lies that anyone could ever tell, but there's something that strikes the researcher, that strikes the author of a biography on him, that somehow or other he's not fully satisfied with what he has accomplished, even though a man who gets to be a vice president in his 40s would be admirable to a lot of people.
Well, what you're saying is, but it's a pattern of deception, just like we've seen in the president, but there was something else. He was caught making telephone calls out of his office, and what he said was, well, there were a few occasions, but in your book, as I recall, there were, what was it, 56, 57 telephone calls?
There was over 50 calls, 40-something of which had been completed, and most of them involved the raising of money. Yeah, and I think that the twin examples during the campaign of the so-called fundraiser at the Buddhist temple in California, which he originally called a community outreach event, and of course the phone calls where he said there was no controlling legal authority that said he couldn't make those calls from the White House. I don't think we're talking necessarily about things that were illegal, or if they were, it's kind of a gray area of the law, but I think it was the kind of pressure that Gore came under that allowed the nation to view how this man functions in a personal crisis. What standards does he set for himself? Does he acknowledge mistakes when they're made? Is he forthcoming with the American people? And I think in this particular circumstance, Al Gore left a lot to be desired.
Please come again.